Let's hear from Zimmer and Dom Capers about what they're doing.
Dom has been doing this for a long time, and I know he's always had really good ideas in the pressure game defensively. And so, I just wanted another idea guy, really, somebody come in and maybe have a little better way of doing things than we've done it in the past, or at least be able to say, have you thought about doing it this way or that way? And then, we all sit in a room and decide, how we want to do things. But I just thought with the experience that he has and, the number of things that he's done in his career, and basically he was doing a lot of the same things in Jacksonville that he'll be doing here.
Well, I've been around a lot of different situations, and to me, they're all a little different. They're all a little bit unique, but that's one of the things I look forward to working with Andre and Adam, and hopefully we can form a good team. And I know that we've got a guy as a head coach that really knows what he's doing on defense, and I've worked for offensive head coaches and defensive head coaches, and there's always a comfort level when you're working for a defensive head coach that he's going to be very involved in what you're doing.
There's a little Dom Capers for everybody. So 06 Dolphins, if you were one of those, like Madden is becoming awesome around 06.
Yes.
Remember Jeremiah Bell? And the announcers would always have to be like, it's Jeremiah, not Jeremiah Bell. I'm getting that right. I'm not just saying it wrong. Zach Thomas, Channing Crowder, about Vonnie Holliday, Kevin Carter. So great. I want to interview Dom Capers about every player he coached from 92 to 2007. And then he's with Green Bay for a really long time. That's where you know him. And his defenses were really up and down. They were good when he first started there, and they won the Super Bowl with his defense in 2010. And then it fell off pretty hard, but they were mid-pack most of the time. Toward the end, they were really poor. And obviously they moved on. Excuse me. Sorry. But they moved on from Dom Capers after 2017 and hired Mike Pettin. And then Capers had been a assistant with the Jaguars doing the same thing as he's doing now.
Where will Danielle Hunter rank among the players that he's coached that you basically listed off for the first 6 minutes of this program?
So he's no Kevin Green. And Kevin Green's one of the great players in the history of the game. But he's probably ahead already of someone like Kevin Carter or Lamar Lathan. That's pretty good. What did Julius Peppers would have played for him in Green Bay. So Julius Peppers is ahead of Danielle Hunter. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Maybe for our website, I should just make an all Dom Capers team. Maybe I'll just do that.
The all Dom Capers defense
for the show. That will be the show today. It's just the all Dom Capers defense. Okay, let me give you a real take on this. Right. Number one, it's not unusual at all to take somebody who is no longer interested in being a defensive coordinator, or that you don't really have a position to give them as a defensive coordinator, and then you bring them in to just help out. And Dom Capers, for the longest time, I read you all those linebackers from Pittsburgh, the Levon Kirkland and all those guys, was the 3-4 type. Now, in the NFL today, there's no such thing as the 3-4, really. I mean, you might have a three-man front, but it's pretty rare that you've got four linebackers actually in there because everybody's passing and everybody's spreading it out. You saw it a little bit against the Vikings last year because teams would need to put in a bunch of linebackers to try and slow down Dalvin Cook or slow down the two tight end sets or the sets with the fullback. But usually you're talking about two linebackers and three men up front and maybe an outside linebacker that is much more of a pass rusher. So what Preston Smith or Zadarius Smith did, or, you might see this from Von Miller would be an example of this, or Khalil Mack, where they only rush the passer, but technically speaking, they're a linebacker. So it's still kind of the same look as 4-3, but bringing in somebody who can help you out, who's had a lot of success, who might have some good ideas on defense is a thing that makes sense. And it made sense for Gary Kubiak last year and ended up working out pretty well. And if you're taking some 3-4 ideas and transferring them over to the Vikings, number one is Anthony Barr, for sure. That Anthony Barr is being paid like an edge rusher, like one of the star guys who comes up with double-digit sacks in the league. He's going to have a cap hit that's over 10. I think it might be like 12 this year and 15 million by next year. So if you're going to stick with Anthony Barr, you have to get more out of him than they got this year. By Pro Football Focus, he was a below average linebacker this year, Anthony Barr. He only rushed the passer 120 times, which was actually the second highest of his career. And he got 22 pressures, 2 sacks, 7 hits by the Pro Football Focus numbers. That's not really getting $12 to $15 million in cap hit out of a guy who has a lot of talent. And if Dom Capers' role, like, my theory of having a coach for every player, if his job was to coach the Vikings on how to use Anthony Barr better to get him more sacks, more pressures, then you should be all for it. Because I think that, and you're just putting together some pieces here. They didn't want to be super specific, naturally, about Dom Capers' role and what he's going to bring to the table. But if you're really trying to just sort of put a few things together, I mean, at the right defensive end position is Everson Griffin, who might not be here. So how are you going to fill that spot? Well, you're going to draft somebody with a first-round pick? I don't know, because you got a lot of other needs. You need a left guard. You need probably a number 3 receiver. You need a safety. You need several corners. There's a lot of positions where that could go. And when you have Danielle Hunter already, do you want to spend that on a defensive end? Probably not. So then you're talking about how can you fill in the pieces? A Fadi Adenabo, or being able to have fronts that use Anthony Barr up against a tackle or up against a guard, or however you might decide to use him. And, somebody like Lamar Lathan, 1990 to 1998, everyone, is when Lamar Lathan played. So let me just make this comparison. He was a big, lanky guy who ended up getting somewhere between 8 and 14 sacks after early in his career he didn't. Lamar Lathan played for Houston early in his career, and his first 4 years are 0 sacks, 2 sacks, 1.5, and 2. And then he goes to Carolina, and he has 8, 13, and then, he got old and retired. But it might be the same sort of deal. Kevin Green, even in Los Angeles with the Rams, was not the biggest pass rusher, and then he became more of a pass rusher under Dom Capers.
Is the Dom Capers hiring another sign that Zim's not going to be able to spend as much on the defense as he has on the pass? Now with Dom Capers, they essentially have, with the 2 co-defensive coordinators as their official labels, they essentially have 4 defensive coordinator minds on that defensive staff with Zimmer and Dom Capers, Patterson, and Adam Zimmer. Is this another sign that Zimmer's going to be told, you can't spend as much on the defense as you want because we have to spend on offense to help Kirk, so you guys are going to have to coach up these guys more?
Yeah. No, I think that's part of it, that it might have to be, when he's talking about creating pressures, it might have to be more than just send 4. Yeah. Because a lot of times they've been able to just send 4 and then blitz on third down. It might have to be more blitzing, and it might have to be more creativity, because you're going to have young players at certain positions, and you might lose some of your guys that you've relied on for so long. So that is the Dom Capers take. Now, Gary was also at the podium as well. And if Courtney were here, she would be cheering Gary. He talked about working with Kirk Cousins.
Well, I think you got to give him and his teammates credit. I mean, he played extremely well. Had a lot of help around him. The guys up front, Dalvin, the way he played, Diggsy, the receivers, Adam. He got a lot of help from Rudy and a good group. So, but I also think that we worked really hard to try to figure out what we think he does best and how we could grow from that standpoint. I think the number one thing Kirk did last year, he got rid of the football. And it's hard in this league to get that mentality that the ball's got to come out, for your team to be successful. So I think he took a step in that direction, but now it's time for us to grow off of that. And, how do we get better? He's in the prime of his career. He's a good football player. This is a good football team. And the better he plays, the better we coach, the further we have a chance to go in this business. So we'll keep pushing on that, but he's definitely doing his part.
Man, I just love how many times they say football. This is so great. This is a good football player. It's a good football coach. It's a good football team. It's a good football running back of football. It's awesome. Kirk Cousins last year, this speaks to the Gary effect. If you go through Gary Kubiak's history as an offensive mind, play action has always been a big part of it. Just at random the other day, I was watching an old Denver Broncos, Jacksonville Jaguars game in the playoffs. And one thing I noticed was, yes, they gave it to Terrell Davis all the time, like every other play. But the plays that were not given to Terrell Davis were all play actions. So this is something that throughout the history of football has just worked and worked and worked. And defenses have not figured out a good way to stop the Kubiak and Shanahan style play actions. Last year, the only quarterbacks who had higher passer ratings with play action were Gardner Minshew in sort of limited duty. Actually, that's surprising. Gardner Minshew threw the football a lot, the football last year. didn't use a lot of play action because of John D. Filippo. Weird. But he had great numbers in play action. Drew Brees and Ryan Tannehill. Those are the only guys who had higher passer ratings than Kirk Cousins last year. 129.2, 14 touchdowns, 2 picks for Kirk Cousins, and averaged almost 10 yards a throw when using play action. I mean, that's the Gary Kubiak effect. And when you look at how much it was used, he was up at the top 6th most in terms of play action usage. And ahead of him, Garoppolo, Mahomes, Jared Goff, who's with Sean McVay, obviously, and then Lamar Jackson. So a lot of the better quarterbacks and a lot of the better schemes are using play action a lot. And that's where when Kubiak talks about having the best year of his career or getting the most out of him, playing to his skill set, this really works. Now, the question, of course, is, can you ever do enough? Because when push comes to shove, you can't just play action your way out of things. When it's 3rd and 15 in the Super Bowl and you need a 30 or 40-yard throw to Tyreek Hill, you can't play action there because they realize that you have to pass. So you can't fool anyone. You just have to make the throw. And that's where Cousins has had his problems. It's not just his running and his escapability. It's sometimes there just needs to be a big time throw out of the shotgun on 3rd and long. And a lot of times for Cousins during his career, it hasn't been there. But I think they can repeat what Cousins did. It's the idea of getting him to another level that I would question. So everything else around you, as you mentioned with bringing in Dom Capers, everything else around the quarterback has to be really, really good. And Dalvin Cook can't get hurt. And Adam Thielen, I mean, against the Lions, he could get hurt, and with, Washington or something, he can. But if he's slowed down against San Francisco, that can't happen. So you have to have a lot of things fall right into place if they are staying with Kirk Cousins. And Kubiak, because he's old and wily, did not show his hand anyway in terms of how he feels about Kirk as a long-term quarterback, just about getting the most out of him in 2020, which even though we talked yesterday about trading him to a bunch of different places, probably not going to happen. He'll probably be the quarterback in 2020. Co-defensive coordinators, Jonathan. I can't say that I've heard this one before.
No, I mean, I don't remember it happening.
No. Andre Patterson. Let's hear from him.
Adam and I have had great communication in the 6 years that we've been together. When Mike called us both in and asked us would we consider doing this, Adam and I got together and talked a lot of things through, and I think it's going to be a great thing for our players and for our defense and for the Minnesota Vikings. So I have no concerns about it whatsoever.
Andre Patterson has earned the bleep out of this job, by the way. He has been at the center of the development of a ton of different guys on the defensive line, and most notably would be Everson Griffin. When he arrived, Everson Griffin was a part-time pass rusher, no more well-known than a Fadi Adenabo, and now he's a superstar who's in the Pro Bowl every year. And Daniil Hunter, same thing, is setting records after being a guy who was a 3rd-round pick, and then even someone like a Fadi Adenabo, where you see them develop, Jaleel Johnson, players like that, getting better and better under Andre Patterson. He really earned this, and he's going to share it with Adam Zimmer, who's been on the staff for a very long time. And what that sort of leaves it open to is, where do you go from here on defense? Because Zimmer this morning on his conference call talked about how he wasn't super pleased with some things that happened last year. Now, what I attribute that to is your cornerback that you love so much did not play good at the football. That was what happened. That Xavier Rhodes was extremely responsible for a lot of the yards and a lot of the points that you gave up, because opponents could just attack him for the entire game. But also the lack of an interior rush was part of it too. And I'm sure that's another area they want to look at. But in terms of how much this will change things, I don't get the idea it's a ton. But Mike Zimmer was asked this morning about whether he'll give up play calling to either Andre Patterson or Adam Zimmer.
We're still in the process of all that. We'll figure all that out as it goes. I can always call the plays, but we'll just see how it goes in the spring. We've got a plan that we're going to stick to, and then we'll just see how it goes. And if I feel like the best thing for the team is for me to call defenses, I will. And if I feel like it's not, then I won't.
I don't really have a take on this, on whether Zimmer should call plays. I mean, he's pretty darn good at it, I guess. And if he was botching game management all the time, then I would say, dude, give up your play calling. Let Andre Patterson handle it. He knows the defense. He's been with you for your whole career. So let it go. but it hasn't really been an issue. This is something where Zimmer will make a mistake a couple of times a year and Twitter will just implode with, he's old, he doesn't know what he's doing, he loves punting. But when you actually look through the numbers in terms of how often they go for it on fourth down, how aggressive they are, compare the expected points added and all those sorts of analytics that you can use to decide whether it's a good decision or not, for them to go for it. Usually Zimmer's pretty good at it. I don't think that he loves punting. I do think that he likes to be a little bit more aggressive with whether he goes for it or not and things like that, and is more of upper third as opposed to lower third. He's not John Harbaugh where he's going for it all the time and being super aggressive, but he's also not doing what Mark Trestman did in the XFL the other day, which is kick a field goal down 17, when in that league, that's a 2-score lead. If Zimmer wants to keep calling plays, then okay, then that is what he should